Taoiseach, the revelations about systemic, sustained and grotesque sexual abuse that took place in Blackrock College over many years are shocking and harrowing. We now know that at least 233 men have made allegations of abuse against 77 Irish priests in from the Spiritans Order. Of that number, 57 have alleged they were abused on the campus of Blackrock College. Some of the abusers were serial abusers, abused with impunity over decades in that school. At night, they roamed freely through the boarding school, abusing their victims in their beds. A culture of omerta and a desire to protect the institution over the children in their care ensured that this dark chapter in the school's history remained shrouded in secrecy until now. We all owe a huge debt of gratitude to brothers Mark and David Ryan, who bravely spoke about their own abuse at the hands of Father David O'Byrne and other priests on an RTÉ documentary last week. Tragically, neither brother knew the other had been abused by the same man until they finally told their parents and went to the Gardaí in 2002. Their story has prompted many more from a number of different schools run by religious orders to come forward and tell their stories of abuse, trauma and shattered lives. The Irish Times today features an interview with John, which is not his real name, who was repeatedly abused by brother Luke McCaffrey in Willow Park in the 1980s and the 1990s. John said he still wakes up screaming, "No, brother Luke, please, brother Luke, please, brother Luke." I want to quote from John, and he says, I could never hold down a job, a steady relationship, and have alienated all of my friends systematically. I've not met anybody socially for years, and I'm effectively a recluse, bar walking the dog. I'm forever apologising to people for things I haven't done wrong. I've never been convicted, but I've always felt like a criminal. Taoiseach, how can we stand over a situation in which those who have been abused feel like the criminals and the perpetrators don't? Many abusers have lived long lives and are respected in their communities until they died. In the past hour, the Spiritans have announced that independent experts have been appointed to examine abuse in Spiritan-run schools. We need to examine the detail of that. However, this independent process covers just one congregation. The state has an obligation belatedly to act also. Taoiseach, we must have a public inquiry into what went on in these schools. We must know how many children were abused and by how many abusers, and why was it covered up for so long? There have been allegations of paedophile rings operating, and that must be examined also. It's long past the time that we in this country finally dealt with our past, in which children were repeatedly raped and abused by those who had a duty to protect them. And I'm asking you, will you agree to a public inquiry into this?
First of all, I'm going to thank the Deputy for raising this very, very serious issue. As I said, the level, the scale and nature of sexual abuse carried out in Blackrock and indeed in other school settings is absolutely sickening and shocking. And our sympathies go out, that's the correct term, and thoughts to all the victims and survivors of such terrible abuse, because such sexual abuse causes immense trauma for the entire life of those who have been abused. It destroys many aspects of their lives. And that has been the story of many, many people, unfortunately, in this country for far too long. And it's a stain on our society that so much abuse occurred in settings where people were entitled to feel safe and where people should have been protected and nurtured. And in that context, I think we've had many inquiries in the past into abuse in different settings, primarily in church settings, in terms of the inquiries into Ferns, the inquiry into the Dublin Diocese, the inquiry into Cloyne, the industrial schools, again, were in many instances religious were in charge there. And again, we've learned a lot from many of those inquiries, and they've been very painful and traumatic for many concerned. So we have agreed to a debate next week on this. I would be interested in engaging with members of the Oireachtas on this and other parties in terms of how best we can go about this. Government is going to give this further consideration in respect of the most effective way to have a victim-led approach to unearthing what went on here and all aspects of that, if there was a cover-up, the nature of that cover-up, but more importantly to get a proper understanding of the scale of what went on here. I'm very conscious that in the past inquiries, some took longer than perhaps people would have anticipated. Some were more effective and gave outcomes more quickly. And I think I'm very conscious of that. So the mode, the manner in which we go about this is important. And we do have to learn lessons from previous inquiries in that regard. And very often it may require a bespoke type of inquiry. And as you know, scope of that inquiry in terms of reference are very important issues. But we're certainly, the government is giving this consideration. But I'd like to do it in consultation with other members of the Oireachtas.
I would appreciate that consultation. I think that's going to be necessary for the best way to move forward, because this is about isolation, people feeling that they're the only one. It would not be possible to, for this to have gone on as long as it was without that feeling of isolation. And last night on the primetime programme, Mark Ryan said, "You think you're the only one who has been abused. And what is needed is a true picture of what happened." And we really do need to get to that true picture of what happened. Otherwise, people will feel that there isn't accountability. They will feel that isolation. Essentially, you will have people who, as you say, who have spent their lives, a whole of life response to this, and that poor man John, who feels that he's a criminal, even though he has done nothing wrong. So I'd appreciate that we would have that engagement, Taoiseach, and you might just articulate how that might happen in addition to the debate next week.
Well, first of all, I think, you would be, first of all, I want to pay tribute to those who've come forward, to Mark and David Ryan and others. And I know that the Sexual Crime Management Unit at the Garda National Protective Service Bureau has received a number of new complaints this week. And obviously the Gardaí will be fully supported in carrying out their work and pursuing every lead possible. And I would agree with what you have said in terms of the need to give support to survivors and to victims who are coming forward, that they're not alone, and that the state will be there to support them in terms of getting the true picture of what happened here in this particular context. I think we have to continue to lift the veil of silence and over this particular area, and again to seek if we can give some degree, if it's possible, of closure, but also a sense of justice to those who've been abused and to those who've been traumatised by what happened in the college, and to end the sense of isolation that you've spoken of.